Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. And before we get into it with our guest here today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, to please give a like and subscribe down below. I'd greatly appreciate it. We have Sandee Lark on the podcast, coming to us all the way from Colorado, where I hope the weather's better than it is here, but we'll find out soon enough. But she's an IFBB pro, and she's on here to share her health and fitness journey and basically discuss all things health and fitness. But most importantly, she's our current guest. Sandee, thank you so much for coming on.
You're welcome. Glad to be here.
Well, I gotta ask first off, what is the weather like right now in Colorado?
So today was nice. We were 60, I think, 60 degrees, but Colorado's weather's funny because you go from 60 to 20 in 2 hours, 3 hours. So it started nice and now it's cold.
I mean, you're talking to a Minnesotan here, so I know exactly. It's like Colorado weather on steroids, basically. Then is I mean that's the only way I could describe it. So yeah,
Yeah,
we've had days
that's
where it's
correct.
80, and then like 10 degrees, and you're just yeah. But before we get into all that, because I mean I don't want to depress half of the guests before we get started on this. Why don't you first off just sort of give us your backstory and how you got started in a healthy and fit lifestyle and how that led to where you're currently at right now?
So basically, I started as a personal trainer at Lifetime Fitness, and I was just doing floor training basically with clients. And I had a couple clients that were interested in bikini competitions, and I kind of knew about them, but I didn't know a lot about it. And I had a couple people say, do you compete? Because I guess as a trainer, you're just assumed to compete. And I was like, no, I don't. I don't compete. But I was getting curious. So there was like a bug that sort of, I just couldn't let it go. So I thought, I'm going to try it. I'm going to do a show. I'm going to get a coach, do a show, and try it. And I sort of caught the bug when I did the show. I didn't necessarily place tremendously well, but I took home some hardware. And I'm a competitive person. So put me in any type of a competitive environment and I'm going to take off. So it sort of just started from there and then just took off.
And getting into the sport, I mean, did you have any reservations at all? Because for a sport like bodybuilding, there are so many myths that the general public believes, or they're just so ill informed about the sport. Because I tell people, like, when I say that I talk to bodybuilders a lot, they say, oh, those are the people that just work out a lot and they go on stage and they pose. And I'm like, you got about 1% of the lifestyle down. I mean, you got some of the basic things, but there's just so much more of this lifestyle than meets the eye.
Yes. Yeah. Basically. And it's not as easy as everyone thinks, but it's not as hard as everyone thinks. It's consistency and persistence, and I've actually grown a ton from this sport. It's taught me that failure is actually good. It's not bad. So I've actually grown in the gym more in the past 5 years. And I say in the gym because most of the growth, in my opinion, comes from the training. That's where you spend countless hours in your head thinking, emotions, thoughts that you're processing. So for me, it's just maintaining that consistency and it became a lifestyle. So I don't consider it to be difficult at all.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's the same thing where I mean, I'm not as in shape as I was before, but I tell people it's like I mean, just the consistency is the hardest part for so many people because everyone wants everything now and they want it yesterday basically now, and this is the one lifestyle that if you're going to get into it, good luck with that. And I mean that also goes off into one of the myths that I love to bust in this podcast. We talked about it right before we started recording, is that it's gotten better the last 5 years, but there's still so many women that have that fear that if they walk into a gym and they even look at a dumbbell, they're going to put on 50 pounds of muscle. And like I told you before, spend my entire college savings or not my college savings, my entire life savings to basically just go and, work out with you for one session, really. But did you ever have that fear when you were getting started? And even if you didn't have that fear, I mean, I bet you still hear that all the time now. How do you like to respond to that?
Yeah, I mean, there's always fear. So life, the things you're doing in life is going to be fearful. For me, instead of it being, scary or raising my anxiety or being fearful, I just choose like, okay, it's a challenge. Let's do this. Or is it a problem? How do we fix the problem versus kind of living in your own thoughts and allowing it to just take you over?
I mean, this is so much more of a mind game than it is a physical game. And you talked about that growth that happens in the gym. Most people just realize that physical change because it's the only thing that's visible. But how has this sport also impacted you mentally? Because, like I said, it taught you some valuable lessons, but that mental growth is a million times more important, at least in my opinion, than the physical growth.
Oh my gosh. So my biggest thing I tell my clients is if you can get your body right, you can get your mind right. So for me, and I truly believe that because so many people aren't confident with their bodies, and it's odd because they get confident with their bodies and then they get their mind right. So we can look really, really pretty on the outside, but we have to work even harder on the inside. So the sport has been incredible for me as far as mentally growing. I've grown so much mentally in the sport than any other aspect or any career that I've done, just because it's tough. It is mentally tough, but it's also it's cool in a way that it's mentally tough, but there's so much pieces of the puzzle that are not tough. And so you can just, I mean, you can, are you going to focus on the stuff that's hard? You can focus on the stuff that's great. And that's what I have to try to remind myself is it is hard. And when you lose shows or when you don't get that pro card, it's so easy to quit and say, it's not for me. I don't have the body. I don't have the shape. And that's when I think a good support system, a good coach, people that you're surrounding yourself with is going to help tremendously because you can be mentally strong, but you're going to want that support system to help you.
Absolutely. That support system is key. And speaking on that support system, what was your friends and family's reaction like when you first announced to them, "Hey, I want to give bodybuilding a
Oh,
try"?
oh, that's interesting, actually. My husband was great with it. He was like, he's always been supportive in anything I did. And he just wanted me to try it. He had been trying to get me into fitness for a long time. And then I became a personal trainer through Lifetime and worked there for a while. They've been great. Some families kind of when I was doing bikini because I started bikini, they didn't understand it. I remember he was 4, my 4-year-old at the time, my very first show. He was 4 years old, and of course I wanted all my kids to come to that bodybuilding show, but I was new, I didn't know what to expect. And I remember my husband told me at some point in the show, my 4-year-old goes, "Hey dad, why does mom have to walk to the back of the stage and stick her butt out?" And I was like, "Okay, maybe the competing maybe they don't need to go to all my shows, Okay, that's fine." So, lesson learned, 4-year-olds don't need to go to bodybuilding competition, but he was proud of me, and, so the bikini one, I think people had a harder time, and it's unfortunate because bikini gets they kinda get that vibe where they're like, "Oh, you're bikini, you're putting a big," and it's not that way at all, unfortunately.
Yeah, I've talked to so many bikini competitors that yeah, I hear that a lot too, and I really do think that it's like, yeah, I mean, it's for all it gets, I mean, it's been a great division. It's introduced so many new people just to the sport, and it's I mean, I think it's at least the biggest division when it comes to at least the competitors. So it's done so much more, for the sport. But I mean, when it comes to this lifestyle, nutrition is one thing that people do not talk enough about, but it is the deciding factor for so many things. I mean, I still have friends who, God bless them to this day, go and have Burger King 3 days or 3 times. If they go and have it 3 times a day, good luck to them. But they have it like 3 times a week or something like that. And then I mean, it's like I'm 27, so I tell them, yeah, call me in 5 years and tell me how it's working out for you. But what were some of the bigger nutritional changes that you made when you really started to take things in bodybuilding seriously? Because that's all. I mean, being a personal trainer, I mean, yeah, you have a healthy lifestyle and you eat healthy, but once you get into bodybuilding, I mean, that nutrition really kind of amps things up a little bit.
They tell you when they everyone thinks because 'cause you're a personal trainer that you live a healthy lifestyle. That's not true. That's not true at all. No. Now bodybuilding, you do. You have to if you're getting on stage. I learned so much in nutrition. Now, I was a personal trainer before I started bodybuilding. So I knew about nutrition. I'm not a nutritionist. I have a nutrition certification, but I don't, you know, I'm not a nutritionist. So the diet and the nutrition, when I started doing this, the basic thing is just paying attention to what you're putting in. So I measured everything, weighed everything, and logged everything, and started realizing how crappy I was eating as a personal trainer. So, I mean, it was eye opening. And actually, even going through, because I've been with a couple coaches and 2 different coaches in the past, and the different nutrition between the two of them is even different. So I'm learning, constantly learning.
That's another thing about the sport is that it's always ever evolving and you're never going to find, that one thing that works for you just perfectly. And that's, that's one of the things too about the sport where I was like, can't you just find it once? Just that one thing that really works for you. And then you're just like, I can just use it then for the rest. I mean, it's like, there are people, I always love the interviews, like of the people who, after they win shows, they're like, oh, there's always stuff that I can improve on. And I was like, can't you just enjoy it, just for the day or whatever, and just be like, yeah, I'm the best. But even like Miss Olympia, Andrew Shaw was like, yeah, there's plenty of stuff that I can still work on. I'm like, you're the back-to-back champ. Come on now. But so but again, that's that drive that you need to have to compete in the sport. Because if you become complacent, the next thing you know, there's going to be someone, bigger and better next year down the line. But I love to talk genetics because everyone's on social media. Oh my god, I hear this all the time. Oh my god, I want his arms, I want her abs, I want their back, and I almost just want to strangle them just because you do not understand, first of all, how much of a big difference genetics plays in that. And so many people have that, belief that if I just train as much as him and and I eat what he eats, I'm going to look just like him. That's just not the case. And I mean, on top of that, everyone, when they first get started, has that one body part that, just takes off. They really just train it maybe like once a month at the most. And then everyone has that one body part that just drags behind that they have to train to oblivion. I mean, my back was the one thing that took off for me, but I'm also 6'3", so anything lower body, there's a reason why I'm sitting down and not standing up when I do these podcasts. Calves, don't even get me started. I've made the joke that I could inject pure muscle into my calves and they wouldn't even gain an ounce. I mean,
Oh, wow.
yeah, you would. I mean, so I was 6'3" since basically like 7th grade. I was that kid that like got really, really tall and then stopped growing. And then everyone else finally, either caught up to him or got super close. So yeah, my legs were always, I mean, I was called Twigs by my friends and stuff like that because of my legs and stuff. And, I was called Chicken by my uncle because I had chicken legs and stuff like that. So, don't even get me started on that. But before I go into my entire, trauma of my childhood, what was one body part that really took off for you? And then one body part that really dragged behind when you first started getting into the bodybuilding sense?
So that's funny, quads. So I played soccer, when I was younger, coached soccer for all my kids. So I think that's where my quads came from. I don't know. My quads took off at my shoulders. So I've got, those are actually, I actually had to stop competing in bikini because my shoulders were too big. They're like, your shoulders are big. But then they're like, go to figure. But then I had a whole new set of problems because even though I had big shoulders and nice quads, I didn't have glutes. I didn't have a back. And I certainly didn't have a thick back. And my waist, I have a small waist. That's kind of a plus.
I'm not gonna lie, I was gonna message you before this podcast and be like, I don't know if I need to like get a bigger camera for your shoulder because there's one photo of your shoulders where like they were like super veiny. And I was like, damn. I was like, what is she doing for shoulder? So I mean, I guess yeah. I was like, she either has to be very genetically blessed or she has like the greatest training tip of all time. So I'm glad it's genetically blessed because I've been trying because for women that's the number one body part is shoulders that really struggles for the most of them. So anytime I have a guest with really nice shoulders and they grew them, I'm like, okay, we're gonna spend the next 5 minutes going through your training program, like minute by minute, so that I can write it down and like make sure. But yeah, that's great. And I mean, glutes. Yeah, the moment that you told me soccer player, I was like, oh god, not another one of these. Good god, soccer players. Yeah, you have great legs and stuff. Rub it in, rub it in. But hey. But yeah, I just love asking that question because it just the wide variety of answers that I get, and it just helps to enlighten people. It's like, hey, everyone's built
Well, it's definitely
differently.
genetics
Yep,
play a
everyone's
huge
built
part.
differently, and everyone starts off on a different square when it comes to the game of
There
life,
are, and
basically. But
yeah, there are some girls that can get up there and get their pro card right away because they just have beautiful builds, beautiful bodies. I got mine pretty fast, faster than most. And again, I'm just gonna Italian genetics. You know,
we talked about this
I'm not mad
before.
about
Yeah.
it.
Oh yeah, we talked about this before. Well, I'm not that. I mean, I'm majorly Norwegian, but like I have a little Italian in me, like 10%. But like, yeah, it's amazing that all Italians aren't like 400 pounds, and I've stated that as a fact because of the food and stuff. Like I could every Friday at my aunt's house eating pasta, and we even had meatloaf in there, and oh, just I'm surprised that like I came out as a skinny twig after eating all of that. But again, genetics. You got to give a shout out to that. But I mean, on top of everything that happens in this lifestyle. I mean, I always often find it funny when like bodybuilders walk out in public basically and they sort of I compare it to being like a mini celebrity where you could draw people's attention where it's like that's not really the norm for a lot of people. So when they see that they're like, "Oh wow, that's fascinating." What has that been like for you as you've gotten, more muscular and as your journey's gone on to sort of deal with that sort of extra added attention that you get? Cuz some people they're just like, "Oh, it's fine," but other people are like, "I do not understand why this is happening."
It's funny too because your body changes, and I mean, I've been training for six years, um, but you don't know that it's changing. Like you're just like people are like, "Oh my god, you look incredible," and you're like, "Oh, well, thanks," and but you saw it. So I was like kind of skinny fat before I started. I was skinny, but no muscle. So just I was carrying more fat than muscle, but I was skinny. So I looked, fine in clothes. So I still sort of carry that image with me that I'm still skinny. So when someone comes up to me and they're like, "Oh my gosh, you have a beautiful physique," I super complimentary. I'm like, I think it's awesome. It doesn't bother me. I have had people walk out of the grocery store with me wanting to know my diet. That's slightly uncomfortable. But I picked up clients. I mean, I'm literally my own walking billboard. We're opening a gym soon, and what better way to get clients than to actually just take care of your body? And I love it. I mean, I put so much work into it. I'm proud of it. So
So you're
I
gonna
don't mind it.
you're gonna sit there and tell me that you look in the mirror and you see those shoulders and you think to yourself, "I'm still skinny."
I do. No, see, here's no, I'm gonna tell you what. I'm gonna tell you what. Seriously, I do. And it's funny because I'll be backstage. Just when I got my pro card, I was backstage and they came up to me, one of the ladies came up to me and asked me if I was bikini. Because I'm just a smaller frame, but I can puff up pretty big on stage. So I'm stuck in bikini. It's like a mental mind thing that I've got to get over, and I'm working on it. I'm working on it.
Okay, if you ever need a dose of reality, just message me and say, "Hey, do I look skinny?" I'll just be
Yeah,
like,
I
"No, you
know.
don't. What the hell's wrong
Yeah,
with you?" Yeah,
thanks.
basically. But no, but I mean, yeah, and I've dealt with that too. Where I even went to a friend one time and I was like, "Do I look fat?" And then I was like, "I had like a six pack," and he's like, "Dude, what are you talking about?" And I was like, "I know, just tell me." It's kind of like that was like my tell me I'm pretty moment for guys, basically. Where I'm just, but yeah, it
Well, it's no
happens.
different than, yeah, the fat girl that loses all the weight. She's still the fat girl inside. I was the skinny girl that put on muscle, but I'm still the skinny girl inside. So even though I mentally am so much stronger, that fear creeps in, and it really creeps in when I'm backstage.
Yep, absolutely. And I mean, I was gonna ask you this later on, but you did bring it up. You're about to open a gym. How did that whole process come to be?
Yeah, so like I said, I started training at Lifetime, and I'm not a floor trainer. I didn't it didn't work for me. I loved my clients and the trainers there, but just wasn't for me. So I started training out after a local smaller gym, and we have an RV garage in our but I don't have an RV. So my husband transformed it into a gym, and I'm telling you right, the thing is so cool. It is. I trained for 2 years. I don't know, 15 clients out of that gym. No overhead. It was awesome.
So you were like one of the few people that was prepared for COVID, basically.
I was so prepared for COVID. So prepared. I mean, I didn't even I opened back up immediately and all my people came back. Of course, we were careful and whatnot and followed all the rules. But what happened was I wanted more space. We were running out of space and we wanted new equipment. So we were going to build, I have 2.5 acres. So we were going to build a big barn, and just continue to keep it private. But my HOA, we live in an estate, um, said we can do it. Actually, they shut my entire business down, even the one in the garage. They said you're not allowed to run any business out of your home, which I thought was somewhat of an oxymoron, considering everyone the past year just ran businesses out of their home. But mine was illegal, so we had to pivot. Um, so we pivoted, and it was actually, how those things in life where you're like, "Oh, I can't believe this is happening. My life is over. My business is over." And then it actually ends up being something completely wonderful. So now they forced me to build a gym. So I'm in the city now. Um, we're going to be a 9,000 square foot gym. And we've just got all the equipment in, and we'll probably open in like 2 weeks, 3 weeks. So it's very exciting. It's like taken off to a different.
Well, then this podcast will be coming out like right along the time that the gym's open up. So everyone, make sure to go check it out. So, I mean, yeah, that's awesome. And are you gonna like specialize in anything? Because like, I mean, obviously there's like CrossFit gyms. There's like other types of gyms. Are you just gonna be just your run of the mill average gym? Or I'm not gonna say average gym, but like just your run of the mill gym where you're not really specializing in anything.
No, actually not. Glad you asked that. We have air compressed equipment. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that. So we have Kaiser air compressed equipment. So instead of using weight or loaded weight, it's actually air. So it's a lot smoother. The resistance is significantly harder. And it's just a different sort of pull on the muscle than a weight would be. And then we've also got the newbie. I don't know if you know about the new fit newbie. So I train on that. I'm certified on that. So, we'll have the newbie, we have air compressed equipment with Kaiser, and we got all custom legend fitness equipment plate loaded. So all the old school stuff.
Okay, I've talked to 400 health and fitness people, and I have never heard of air compressed training in my entire life. So the minute that I stop doing this podcast, I'm going to look it up and see what it. So how does that work with like that? Just seems to me it's like you're using. I mean, it seems like an ingenious thing, but like, does it involve like pulling stuff with? Like, how does that work?
So basically, you're getting resistance in both the eccentric and concentric. So the negative, you can actually, with air compressed equipment, you can make the negative just as hard as if you were to do it the other way. So there's that. It's less pressure on your joints because you're not loading weight on the joints. It's an air compress and it's so smooth, and the resistance is harder. Like I think the belt we have a belted air compress squat machine. So you put the belt on and you squat. That thing can go up to 500 pounds, but he said it's very difficult for people to do 200. So just because of the significantly harder aspect of training on air compressed equipment than just regular weight.
I don't know, but because you can't have those gym bros then just like grunting and like or basically like slamming the weights down then. So I don't know if that appeal. No, but that sounds amazing, and I'm honestly going to include something down below about that type of training for people who are interested in that because that sounds fascinating to me. Because yeah,
It's very cool.
I'm glad that you brought that up because I'm glad that I asked that question then because I would have never guessed in a million years that that would be a thing of training. But it sounds very fascinating to me. But back into your journey, bodybuilding journey, one of the things that I love to talk about in here because for so many people, they never would guess that for the hardest thing for most of these competitors is posing. I mean, I compare it now to being a perfect driver where you can be a great driver. You can never be a perfect driver. We get that reaction almost every time. You can be a great poser. You can never be a perfect poser. It's always ever evolving. What has your experience with posing been like?
Oh my gosh. So I have Sid Gillett as my posing coach, Miss Olympia. So how does my posing go? It's terrifying, terrifying, but she's incredible, and I've learned a ton from her. So basically, I think if you're at this level, you should have a posing coach. You should have a posing coach anyways, because I'm still struggling with it. I mean, I just posed with Sid on Monday, and I haven't posed with her in like 3 or 4 months, and I've already gotten new bad habits, and shoulders are locked up, and things are tight, and so we're supposed to be working on my pro routine, but we couldn't even get to my pro routine because I have to fix the imbalances and the little pickups that we get from just watching other competitors and forgetting my foundation. So I have a significantly great, or the best, I think, posing coach. So my posing, I'm not even that worried about. It's hard. Um, Sydney is probably the hardest, but she's good, and that's why she's my coach. So I'm still struggling.
I mean, the only problem with that is like, how do you even consider like the fact? How do you even think to yourself that like I might win the Olympia one day, knowing that you have to deal with Sydney Gillen then every time that any time that you'd go there, like you just be
Oh
like
my
okay,
gosh, yeah.
just be like I'm just competing for second. That's the best, really. It's yeah,
Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, she's amazing and she's so sweet. She's such a humble person, and I'm learning so much. I'm learning a lot from her, not just posing, but just in general. She's a good teacher in that aspect. But um it's such an important part that it will make or break your placings. And it broke mine. I actually lost the overall in Pittsburgh. I won all my classes, but I lost the overall in Pittsburgh because of my posing. And I knew it. And we had to fix it. And so we fixed it, and then I went and got my pro card. So
Well, I mean, the biggest part of it is so many people just don't understand that your body is not meant to be in that flex of a state for that long a period of time. I mean, most people compare it to like the hardest workout ever, and I've tried it myself a couple of times, and it is like you're gonna sweat more during that, and especially those poor people that there are those poor people that do it right after they're working out, and I'm just like, okay, you poor soul, but how long do you really think into your journey before you think in your journey before you think you develop that sort of mind to muscle connection that you have to have in posing? Because if you were to put someone just from the public out on stage, they'd last for like 10 seconds, and sometimes you're on there for minutes at a time.
it took me about, so when I pose with Sid, we work on posing endurance. So I have to do my holds. So I've worked on it. It's taken me about a year. I'm still working on it, but I've got my holds good enough for nationals. I did really good on my holds then because Sandy Williamson will make you work hard. She will make you hold. And that's one of the things my posing coach works on is holds, which is hard. But now I can hold for a long time. I have to practice to hold. I mean, I haven't stepped on the stage with the big ladies yet. Um, And so then we're going to work on that so that I can hold longer. But it's just practice. I mean, I still, to be honest with you, don't have it down 100%. Maybe Sid does, but the rest of us, she's helping us all.
I've said since day one, like they have a category for best poser. They should have a category for the person that holds it the longest, and then you have like a competition to just see like how long they can do it. I would love, after about 15 minutes or so, I would just love to see, because that person really should actually win the whole thing when it comes. Because it's like, yeah, that to me is just the most impressive part is that people just don't understand how important posing is, and I always find it funny hearing the stories of the people who like during their first show, if they'd never done really that much posing before, just that shock that they learn, first on like how much of a big deal it is, but being a figure competitor, I mean, the number one thing that we hear of when it comes to posing is that's the hardest for a lot of them is flaring those lats because that's that one pose where, I mean, some people it takes them years to develop, but other people it's it just happens naturally. But once you do develop it, it's like sort of like riding a bike where it just becomes easier. But was that something that took you a while to develop, or was it something that you were just magically able to do?
No, 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 no. There was so many different ways I was trying to flare my lats, and the biggest one I actually just told Sydney this on Monday was the biggest tip she gave me, and I've never let it go, is give me a hug. And it's like I never even thought about it, but just don't wrap, just give me a hug, but don't give me a hug. Give me a hug with your lats. And so that was such a great cue that I just keep giving the entire audience a hug when I get out there.
I've never heard that before, so I'm actually gonna. If anyone ever needs any advice on that, I will give that to them because yeah, that actually does sound like great advice. And I mean, when you're walking on that stage, what is that feeling like for you, knowing that you've worked your butt off for a prep? Which I mean, let's be honest, you say that some parts are easy and some parts are bad, but during a prep, especially get towards the end, it's a living hell basically. I mean, it's a good living hell, but I mean, it's hard. Let's anyone that says preps are easy, I tell them I was like, okay, you're lying or you're a psychopath, and hopefully you're not the psychopath. But so what's that moment like for you when you finally walk up on that stage and you just realize that like, hey, this is my time to shine, really?
It's the best feeling in the whole wide world. It's the best feeling. I mean, you've worked so hard for this, and it's just it's here, and it's that moment, and you're so pretty and so dolled up, and everything's dialed in, hopefully. If not, you're gonna fake it, make sure it is. I've never had an instance where I've stepped on stage and I didn't feel ready. All my coaches have gotten me ready to where I felt pretty dialed in and confident. You just have to have the confidence. But I remember the first time I stepped on stage, I was terrified. I was terrified and I was shaking the whole time. I was shaking. Now, my friends and family said they couldn't see it, but I think they were just being kind because I know you could see me shaking. And so it just takes years of the more you can get on stage, the more comfortable you'll be. So like I'll tell some of my clients, I'm like, do as many shows as you can just so you get comfortable. Go to as many shows as you can so you can get comfortable. Because the more comfortable, the more you're on stage, the easier it gets. Now it's exciting, but I'm gonna be terrified again when I do my pro debut. I'll be pretty nervous.
Yeah. And well, most importantly, what was that moment like for you when they announced your name and you realized, oh my god, I'm a pro now?
I knew it was coming. I knew it was coming. So it was incredible, but I thanked God because I knew it was coming. I had worked so hard. It was my 3rd year of nationals. I think it was like my 4th national show, but maybe my 3rd year competing, in nationals. And I'd gotten 2nd the year before and went into off season 2nd place, which was hard. That was not at first I was like, "Oh, I'm okay with it," but it was tough to be first loser, I mean, it's like I'm so close.
I'm a Minnesota sports fan. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Exactly. So it was just, so when they call I knew I was gonna get it. It just it was incredible. It was like this peace over me that it was just my time. I knew it was my time, and it was, and it just felt right.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I mean, you brought up off season, and I love to talk about it because another myth that people just don't understand is that you're not going to be able to maintain that stage look 24/7, 365 days a year. And so many people, I mean, I've had people that have seen bodybuilders in their off season and they're like, "Oh, they even work out?" And then it's like because people just don't understand that you're not going to be able to keep that weight down. And some people try to, and I mean, it's not healthy for you, but what was that like when you first found out that like, "Hey, this is not going to be something that I'm going to be able to maintain." And has it gotten easier for you to accept that and sort of go along with that as your career has gone on?
So I'm slightly different than most people in the fact that I struggle to put weight on. So like I'm naturally an ectomorph. So I'm naturally lean. So I'm the type of person that has abs year round. So I maybe will put 10 pounds on in off season. I'm like 9 pounds up from stage weight right now. So it's hard for me to answer that question because I am trying to actively put weight on and it's difficult for me. So I'm trying. Yeah, I'm trying.
Have you ever just tried like force feeding milkshakes or something like that?
Listen, I am eating so much food, but the food I'm eating is like chicken and rice. I mean, it's you have to eat so much of this food in order for and for a long time. And the other problem is I move so much. I'm a trainer. So like my cardio is nothing now, but it doesn't matter because I'm building a gym and I'm doing cardio building this gym. So I'm constantly battling. I have a very fast metabolism. So I'd have to stop completely moving in order to put weight on. And it probably would be fat, not even muscle. That's the thing. Like I feel like
Trust me though, that's a good problem to have. That you don't put
it
that you
is.
can eat a lot and still get
It is, but it isn't when you have to get on
when you're a
stage with these
bodybuilder, yes.
big, yes, when these girls are putting on muscle. Now I have a little bit of a gold card because I can cut like that and I can get shredded and it's not hard. Like it's not hard for me to get shredded. Um so I can typically beat them in conditioning, but I get outsized most times.
So are you one of those then because of the how it's so easy for you to get conditioned where you wait a little longer to decide like what shows you're gonna do just because you know deep down that it's a lot easier for you to get in that shape?
No, I usually go with my coach and we decide what shows I'm going to do. I knew going into off season last year we were going to target Masters Nationals, which I was dreading because that is one of the hardest national shows in my opinion. These Masters women are incredible and they're hard to beat. So I didn't want to go back to Masters Nationals. I actually wanted to do USA's, but it worked out great. He is the master behind it, and I just do whatever he tells me to, my
And
coach.
again, everyone, she did say masters, and I just want to point out that she looks younger than some people in my high school class. And like I said, I'm 27, so the benefits of working out, everyone, let's just say, like that's if that's the number one thing, it's like, yeah. I for a second before you said masters, for a second I was like, is she really like that? Are you sure that she's not like some like 30-year-old that like just had like, yeah, I don't know, but hey, again, that's the benefits of working out. Probably one of the biggest ones that the people on the outside see, but I mean yeah, it's just this whole lifestyle is just so fascinating, especially from someone like me who's on the outside who just gets glimpses of it on the inside. But when it also comes along with bodybuilding too, and that sort of, off season weight gain and stuff, do you ever find that it's hard for you? Like you said, when it comes to putting on, size or whatnot, do you find that sort of is a struggle for you sometimes mentally to just realize that like I have to put in this much work just to gain a little bit of size when there are some other I'd say more genetically but or more people I'd say built for the sport who literally, they gain 30 pounds the night after their show?
Yes, exactly. No, I get it. And my first, just to give you an example, it's so hard when you're so depleted to balance not losing muscle. And when you're doing back to back shows, like I did two back to back shows, I typically do. We do like a warm up and then we'll do the big one. Um, and so you'll typically do back to back shows. And the problem for me is trying to maintain that muscle and not lose it. I lost 7 pounds of muscle at my first national show. So what took me a year to build, I lost in 4 days because I didn't know what I was doing. My coach and I we weren't paying attention to how fast I was catabolic for 4 days. So then it took me a whole year to put that muscle back on. And we think this year I put 3 to 4 pounds of muscle on. I mean, because even if you're doing, I mean, think about it. I'm putting 10 or 12 pounds on in off season. It's not muscle. You're maybe half of that. And for a woman, that's even harder. A man could probably do half. We were thinking I put 3 to 4 pounds on. So it's extremely frustrating to to just put little tiny bits on. Like I want to put more on. So we're actively working on that.
This sport should really just be known as the law of diminishing returns because It really like, I've talked to some bodybuilders that have done it for, like, 20 years, and they're lucky if they put on a pound in a year, and it's like,
That's hard.
from an outside point of view, you're like, how is that possible? Because you'd think that the body would just be like, yeah, let's just pack on as much as possible. But the body normally is just like, hey, we're gonna slow down a little bit because I don't want to, put on another 10 pounds, every year. But I've always just found that fascinating when it comes to health and fitness, that the body actually at a certain point is like, hey, we're gonna slow things down a little bit because I've gotten used to, sort of living that. So I've yeah, that's been one of the biggest shocks for me. But I mean, I mentioned this before, and time management is one thing that I sometimes have and I sometimes don't have, but I mean, being a mom, having a job, opening a gym, and being a bodybuilder as well, that's basically three jobs. How are you able to do it? Because, like, I even look at that and I'm just like, if only I could get like 10% of her time management skills, my life would be a complete 180. So, how do you have those? And I mean, was it something that you developed, or were you always one of those, personalities where, let's face it, everyone knows that one friend where they have their entire day logged and they just have it down pat? And what is your time management, like, first of all?
Listen, it's not great. It's not great at all. I mean, I'm working on time management, but I delegate. It takes a village. So there are a lot of people in my corner that I'm like, you need to do this. And so, I mean, I've got a family of five. So I have three kids and a husband. But my oldest is 25. Well, she's going to be 25. And then I've got a 16 and a 10-year-old. So they're kind of spread out. So I'm like, you take care of him, he takes care of you. And then we just, I mean, I learned I'm an Italian. We take the whole family. It's a family thing. So there's days my daughter's grocery shopping and my son's taking the car someplace. But I mean, it's a great family. We have a really good family dynamic. So everyone helps everyone out. But yeah, I mean, it takes a village. Can't do it by yourself.
What is the family dynamic? Does the family dynamic change at all as you get like super into your prep, where people just realize, okay, we're gonna leave mommy alone a little bit now? She's getting, that sort of that diet face, right there, the skeleton face as I call it. We're just gonna give her chicken and her rice and sort of give her space.
Yeah, no, that's definitely been a learning curve for all of us. So now I'm really good at, okay, I'm not really good at it. I'm getting better at it. But there's been some times I'm embarrassed and I have to apologize for my behavior a lot in peak week. So I know this. So I just stay in my room. I come out. I'm not kidding. If it's peak week, I'm not leaving my room. I have a gym in my garage. I don't even have to leave my house.
As soon as they hear the
Your
door open,
water,
as
yeah.
soon as they hear the door open, they're just like, "Let's scatter. Let's go to your rooms right now. Let's go."
Sometimes they'll come in the room and they'll hang out. I just like to watch food shows and binge watch Squid Games or stuff like that, all the fun stuff. But I eat and I stay in my room and I just sit in my feelings and I sit in my hunger. And then if nobody's around me, I can't be mean.
That's true. That's true. I mean, yeah, people. I mean, anyone that I mean, I've heard people that say that, like, they just don't understand the sport. And I mean, it's like you don't understand until you've actually like witnessed someone go through the prep and go through all the stuff that it entails, and that really reveals a whole different side to the sport. It's not all glitz and glamour like the final product on the stages. It's not like, I mean, there's so much more, especially, mentally. But cardio is the bane of my existence. Hate it more than life itself. And when I say cardio, I mean like actual running. Like, I can go for like a 10-hour walk if I wanted to, and I'd probably be fine. I mean, I've gone on extended walks before, but when you do become a bodybuilder, you unfortunately sign a deal with the devil when it comes to cardio. So, what is your relationship like with cardio? Because I mean, I know that being that soccer player, you probably already had a good experience. At least moving the body a lot. Like you said, you're very active. But when it comes to the cardio, is it something that you enjoy, or is it something like a lot of normal people, I should say, do, where they tolerate it?
So it's a little bit of both. So what happens is like right now I'm not doing any cardio, so I'm not into it. Because I'm doing very little because we're trying to put weight on. But when I do go to cut, I kind of enjoy it only because I like to do hit, but my coach sometimes doesn't let me do it because I have to be careful not to do real high intensity workouts because I'll, super lean. I can, get catabolic. So I'm not allowed to do as many hit workouts as I want to do. So for me, it's just incline walking. I've got a treadmill that goes to 40% incline. So I'll put it at like 20. I don't do it at 40, like 22% incline. That's just disgusting. Um, at 22% incline, I'll get my heart rate to 150. It gets to 160. I hop off, it's bodybuilders. You can't get over 160. And then I let it come down and then I just come. So I just walk at an incline. And if you get that incline high enough, and then I listen to podcasts or books on audible,
I have to have a
and zone
movie
out.
going. That's the only thing. I have to have a movie going. That's
I
my one
used to do
recommendation.
that.
Yep.
Yep, I used to watch movies, but I've kind of went from away from that to more just trying to get my mind right.
Well, my problem was I ran out of movies after like a year. So I was like, okay, I ran out of movies now. So what do I do now? And then I
That's
started
fair.
watching TV shows, and then I kind of ran out of TV shows. So it got to a point then where I sort of gave up on. Now I go on walks outside because I live in the very beautiful part of the state where we have so many forests around and stuff. And I just the only problem is that you run into like 3 weeks ago. Ran into a deer that literally did not see me, and it was like almost pitch black dark because I like to go out around night, but like there's no one around, so I don't have to worry like about getting robbed or anything like that. But like deer ran out 4 feet in front of me on the track. That was a good scare because I had my headphones on and everything, so I was just walking, listening to some music, and then all of a sudden a deer just runs out in front of me. I was like, oh well,
Oh,
that happens, yeah. So yep, yeah,
wow,
that
that's
was
crazy.
definitely interesting, but the number one thing that is the most important thing in this lifestyle, and I don't care what anyone says, is sleep. Anyone that disagrees with me on that, pull an all nighter and then go and try to work out and tell me how it happens. I did that twice in college and I paid dearly for it both times. What is your relationship with sleep like? Because especially, the whole mom, bodybuilder, entrepreneur thing, it's got to be difficult at times for you.
Listen, I am in bed at 8:30 every night, no matter what.
So do you have like your jammies on right underneath right now? So when we're done, you'll just basically take everything off.
No,
You'll have your jam.
no, but I'm gonna take a hot bath after this, so that's why I haven't changed into my jammies yet. Because 'cause I'll do a nice little salt bath, before I go to bed, but I will go to bed and just be in bed at 8:30. I don't necessarily go to sleep at 8:30, but I force my body to go to bed at 8:30 because I try to get 8 hours of sleep, which I usually do. I'm a huge fan of CBD oil, so I will take that for inflammation and to kind of do recovery, and then, yeah, watch a show, read a book. But sleep is the one of the most important. I will probably get more angry if I don't get sleep than I would in peak week.
Yeah. No, I mean, I melatonin for me has been the ultimate game changer for me, but I mean, I am a psychopath when it comes to sleep where I'm a huge night owl where I'll be in bed at 1 or 2 maybe tonight because I work from 11 to 7, so I'll be getting up at 10 then basically then to go to work. But yeah, I've been trying to work on it and getting better. I've been making progress. During the peak COVID thing where I was unemployed because I'd lost my job a few months, into COVID, I 3 to 4 was an average night. And it's like, well, what do I have to wake up to, really, honestly? So then, yeah, it was just that got dark. So I kind of adopted that, but luckily, because of daylight savings time, it kind of helps me a little bit, especially with that one extra hour that you get. But yeah, that sleep. I mean, yeah, it's a life changer. I mean, if you get that proper amount of sleep, you wake up feeling like a superhero. That's one of the best feelings on the planet, especially after like a long and hard workout. So I couldn't agree with you more on that.
Well, and as bodybuilders, so like I'll even watch my HRV, so my heart rate variability, and it'll tell me like I will watch it in the morning, and if I'm not feeling well, I'll look at my HRV, and if it's low, I'll know, you know what, this is not an intense training day. Most of the time, it's actually pretty high, so I don't have to worry about it. But that's a good tracker too. If your HRV is pretty low, get one of those. If your HRV is good and your body's not requiring that much sleep, then you're young, so you're good. But you're not getting up at 5:30 in the morning. I am. So like I'll get up at 5:30. So I have to go to bed. I'm probably asleep, I would say by 9:30, 10. So I try to get about 7 to 8 hours sleep.
Well, I have been getting up at 7 the last couple of days, but that's because I've been going to bed at like midnight. But I'm going back to it. I fluctuate. See, I'm the most bipolar whenever it comes to sleep. I'll go one night. So yeah, for me. But yeah, getting up early. I love the feeling of getting up early. Although I do it probably about once a month. So that's a big shocker. I mean,
It's hard.
I'll come downstairs and my roommates will just be like, "Oh, what's going on? You feeling all right or something like that?" I was like, "No, I finally got a good night's sleep." So we're good now. And yeah, it's like a whole like holiday basically for them. They're like, "Oh, we can actually talk to you now before you go to work," and it's like, yeah, I guess we can. We can hang out now for a little bit. But yeah, it's definitely an event. But two of the questions that I ask, every guest before we wrap things up here is, if someone were to walk up to you and say, Sandy, we made a decision. You can change one thing about the sport of bodybuilding, and everyone would go along with it. What would be one thing that you'd like to see change?
Oh, that is a really good question. I don't know. I'm not sure. I guess for me, maybe focus more on symmetry versus size. I'm seeing that sort of in my division where some of these ladies are just bigger and they're getting rewarded for size. But to flip that, they are saying that they're looking for more feminine muscle and they're not looking for masculine muscle. So I think they're trying to correct that. Um, but I'm never going to be as big as these girls. I mean, I might in 5 or 10 years, but I'm a 40-year-old woman. So at this point, I don't have a ton of time on my. So I want to win shows, obviously, but I want to win it based off my figure. But it is a size thing. It is a size sport, so I have to appreciate that because these women that are coming in outsizing me have worked harder and they have better genetics, or they've been doing it longer.
Hey, I've had 60-year-olds on this podcast that bodybuild. So hey, this is the one sport where you can go a little bit longer in the gas tank than you can for other
That's
sports.
true.
But yeah, and I mean, and plus the sport's always ever evolving. I mean, even in the 6 years that you finally started to compete, I mean, it's a completely different sport than it was before then.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, it's so and maybe I actually love how shredded we get, so I don't know if that I'd take a lot away. I mean, I think the judges do a really good job. All the feedback I've gotten, I've totally understood, and it made complete sense to me, but that would be my only thing. If I could even and even that's not I think they're doing a pretty decent
I mean,
job.
I love shredded too, as long as like we don't see like your organs and stuff like that. Then it gets to a point where I'm just like, okay, just have a little something, have some water, have something like that. Like there's some of those guests that or those some of those people that come in and like literally it's just like paper, basically like that's what their skin kind of is like, and it's like hey it's impressive as heck, but it's like I'm afraid I don't want you to get like cut or something like that because who knows what's gonna fall out then. But yeah, the shreds to me is and they've been placing a little bit more emphasis on it now, and it seems like this last year they've sort of reversed it a little bit. So I'm going to be interested to see next year what sort of direction they lean into. So I think that should be, very, very interesting. And, I could not end this podcast without asking you because I told you, like I said, everyone says that for women, especially, shoulders is the one thing that they really fear, but, or not fear, but they really struggle with. And, even though they were genetic for you, what do you do on your shoulder day? Like, how do you get them to look like that? Because I would get killed in the comments down below being like, he didn't even ask her what she did for his shoulders because I'm trying to figure this out.
So my favorite exercise that I do is a landmine shoulder press with the landmine. I just love that one. I probably do that twice a week, hands down. I'll do landmine and Arnold press. Arnold presses and landmine presses are probably my favorites. It's just a lot of them. So maybe include 2 shoulder days. If you're short on shoulders, include another day.
That's I mean, again, the advice that it's generally along the lines of what I give. Yeah, too. It's like you're not gonna just train something like once a week and expect it to grow unless you're genetically blessed in that body part, or it's just you get lucky with it. But you're gonna have to train, and it's just gonna have to be a lot of reps and a lot of things. And again, that's a part of the lifestyle that people just a lot of times just don't understand. But when we do talk to you a year from today, because I'll have you on a year from now because you were just such a great first guest or first appearance in your first ever podcast. You did an outstanding job. But when we do talk to you a year from today, where would you like to be at in your bodybuilding? Where would you like to be at just in your overall life or in your gym, in your opening gym as well? Where would you like to be at when we talk to you a year from today?
Well, I would like to have done my pro debut and place top five. That's my maybe not my pro debut, but at some point top five, and not at a masters. Like I want to actually compete with in the open, with um, the younger girls and see if I'm comparable. So that's a goal. I'd like to try that. And we want to just blow this gym up. I'd like to make. I don't know if you know about Armburst Gym in Denver. That's a big Armburst Pro Gym is
Yeah,
sort of a
someone
big
mentioned
gym.
someone's people have mentioned it to me before. Yeah.
So we want to be just like the Armburst Gym of Denver. We'd like to be that of Colorado Springs, where we get the community, build a big community. 150, 200 members would be our goal. And then I'd like to build my girls. I've got a little team of girls. I love watching my people compete. I get so much joy out of that. So I'd like to build that little team up. We've got a small team. I'd like to, grow it a little bit more.
Well, an especially great part of the sport that is so unique, I think, especially to female bodybuilding, is that the competitors generally do care about each other, and like you develop such a close bond with the other competitors. How important is that to you, knowing that like whenever you step on that stage, your fellow competitors have your back?
Oh my gosh, it's so good. I actually have so many figure sisters that I have met online that I feel closer to than my friends. And then we build these relationships, through the gram or whatever. And then we see each other, what show are you doing? And then we see each other and it's like we're best friends. So it is huge. The amount of support that these girls are doing is great. And it's literally like a family. I mean, I see these girls and I get nervous to compete against some of them? Yes, because they're gorgeous. But I'm so excited to see them too and for them to do well. It's extremely supportive that from my aspect.
I mean, it's a blessing and a curse because I've always thought that it would be interesting to be in a sport where you can like actually see your fellow competitors' progress if you follow them like on Instagram and stuff. But then again, I think it would be a little bit more scarier like back in the day where you didn't know what they were going to look like when they showed up. So then like you're like, did I work hard enough? And the next thing you know, someone shows up and they're like 10 pounds heavier than you of muscle. And you're like, oh crap. So like at least now you get a little bit of a warning where you're like, okay, this is what I'm going to deal with. So, I mean, there's a blessing and a curse to it. But lastly, if someone were to walk up to you and tell you, like, hey, I've thought about giving the sport of bodybuilding a try, what would be the best piece, just of overall advice that you would give to them just to get started in their journey?
Find a very good coach and a good posing coach. If your coach doesn't pose, then find 2 coaches. It's just as important, a coach and a posing coach. Hopefully, they do it both, but if not, typically they don't. That's gonna make or break you.
And unfortunately, I do have to point out that for every good coach, there are more bad coaches. So yeah, it is a huge sifting through process. And yeah, make sure you find that right coach because that is the difference for so many guests that I've had on. And do your research first of all, just on everything before you get started. Make sure to do your research. Remember, ask plenty of questions too. You can never ask enough questions, especially to a coach. And yeah, that's really my 2 cents. But yeah. Lastly, is there anyone that you'd like to give a shout out to before we wrap things up?
Um, I guess just, probably my husband.
I was just
I
about
know
to
this is
call. I
gonna
was just about to cough and be like, "Your husband." Yeah,
if I can do that. I was
yeah.
like, I don't it's not a famous person,
Hey, but still, no.
he's
I've always said significant others are the
yeah,
unsung heroes of this podcast. They really are
he's my yeah,
dealing with people
yeah.
during prep, and they usually take care of a lot of the stuff too. Yeah, by far they're the ones that usually take the photos for Instagram, or they do so much behind the scenes stuff that I always love to give them. Even if I don't get shout outs from the guests, I always give them shout outs because them to me they're the unsung heroes. They deal with all the stuff that people don't see in the background.
Yes, he is literally my hero. I call him MacGyver because he's like my assistant coach when we travel, and he's just so much more than that too. So for sure, he's an incredible guy, and I'm so happy that he's mine.
I saw your anniversary photo. He's grown a nice beard, I gotta say.
Yeah,
He's grown a
yeah.
nice one. I mean, yeah, he
I'm
looks
digging
yeah.
the beard.
I
I'm
well,
digging the beard. It's
it's just
cool.
it's the November thing, really, and it's I cannot wait until December 1st because this thing. I mean, I'm gonna need to get a weed whacker for it, but it's gotten to the point now where like it's gotten hard because like trying to sleep at night, your chin is just on fire because you're so warm from it.
Oh no, that's not
So
okay. You have to,
so
yeah,
yeah.
few
Hey,
more weeks.
I'm dedicated. I'm dedicated though, so I'm willing to go. Till the end. I'm not gonna lie. It's gotten to the point too where like if I'm eating like potatoes or something like that, sometimes you might find like that night you might be like, oh, there's a tiny bit of potato in there somewhere, but hey, it's leftover snacks. I'll just say that. It's hey, it's the snacks. But again, Sandee, it was an absolute delight to have you on, and um, yeah, I'll leave a link to your Instagram page down below. Buyer beware, everyone. You will get inspired to, get in shape and get off that couch and stop eating those Twinkies. And everyone go and check out her gym too. Does your gym have a website that you're working on or up and running
It
for us?
does, yeah,
Okay.
yep.
Yep.
It's Lion's Lair Pro Gym.
Okay. I'll leave a link to that as well in the description when this gets released. And again, everyone go and check her out. And again, Sandee, it was an absolute delight to talk to you.
It was awesome. Thanks so much for inviting me. This was great.
I appreciate that. And this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing off. Have a great day, everyone.